So what we have here is a Romulan Decloaked class Warbird. I love this ship. I really properly love it. I just had to go away for a minute and check when this actually first appeared, and I was really surprised, and I actually watched a little bit of the episode, to discover that it was actually in season 1 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. And the last video that I filmed was on the Vorcha class, and that didn't come in until season 4. But that was the last episode of season 1 of The Next Generation, and it reintroduced the Romulans as a potential big bad, because they have a cloaking device just like the Klingons do. So they can just sort of pop up at will, and it's very hard to detect them unless they really want to be detected. And Riker says, that he never thought he'd be this close to a Romulan ship, because as Geordi comments, it's actually been decades since the Federation had contact with the Romulans. And I smiled to myself, because one of the Romulan commanders who speaks with them is actually Gul Dukat's actor from Deep Space Nine. And I think he did turn up in Next Gen as well as a Cardassian. So, there's one of those little crossover moments in my head. But what I find fascinating about the Warbird's design is that it's a complete departure from the bird of prey that we see them use, and in fact their sort of crews that we see them use in the original series. But the sort of avian aspects of their design are still there. He's got a sort of a beak kind of effect at the front there. But this idea of sort of negative space inside the ship is fascinating, and I may have mentioned this before, but this harkens back to one of Gene Roddenberry's design principles for Trek at the time, which was that warp nacelles needed to be able to see each other in order to function. And I didn't mention that with the Vorcha, but it is the case with the Vorcha because it's got sort of outswung nacelles on the end of its wings. But here, the Warbird has clear negative space between the nacelles, and yet it's got this overall curvature. So the idea was, I believe, that it's very much supposed to be on a par, if not a bit more powerful than the Galaxy class Enterprise. And yet the actual volume of the ship is kind of odd, because there aren't quarters in here. There's no structure in here. It's just got this sort of thin neck, top and bottom, and then this sort of big void where, in fact, ships could actually sort of fly into and through if they wanted to, if they're feeling bold. Because in Star Trek, at this point in time, the concept of fighters wasn't really a thing. So you don't really see that, but it's just a fascinating ship to watch on screen. And sort of, you sort of see it decloaking, and then you sort of see it, it's quite maneuverable, it's quite quick. So it feels like a really powerful thing, and it's got this sort of avian effect to it on the top. It's got a slightly sort of reptilian feel to it almost. But this is reminiscent of the bird design that you saw on the wings of the original Romulan bird of prey back in way back in the day, sort of thing. So I just loved it as a ship design, and also because it was different colour as well. It was similar colour to the Klingon ships actually, but basically it's not the sort of the beige effect that you get with the Federation ships. So it's just a really good ship, and I think Playmates made a really interesting choice in actually going for this as one of their big ships. And I completely get it, because it means you've got Galaxy class Federation ship, you've got a Klingon ship, you've got a Romulan ship, and they are the major players early doors in the series. The Vorcha didn't come along until later, so they must only have had a couple of years between the Vorcha first appearing and making the toy of it. Whereas, as I say, to my mild surprise, this Warbird comes up right at the end of the first season as a sort of an indicator that things are, as Picard puts it, about to get more interesting. So let's switch off these lights as ever, and let's have a look at these sort of the sound effects, because again we have the classic Playmates well, 1, 2, 3, 4 at the back here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons. This one is healthier than my Vorcha, so you should get full benefit from this. Now, I'm not entirely sure, as is often the way, which sound effects those are supposed to be. The Warbird packs disruptors as standard. I think they do also use torpedoes as well, but certainly not in the episode that I just watched. So it's a pretty standard sort of Playmates fare there. Basically, you can see that they're very sort of standard kind of Playmates sound effects, really. But yeah, I do like it. And again, as with the Vorcha, it's an eminently sort of playable with sort of ship. That's you can easily grip it at the back, and it's almost got a sort of a hand sort of gripping position there, so you can easily swoosh this around without any sort of problem at all. And the size is comparable with the Vorcha and the Enterprise. So as a trio of big ships, they work really well together. And again, 3 AA's batteries required for this one as well, as with the Vorcha. So it's a really good, it's solid, it's a solid build of a toy. There's nothing on here that is going to snap off. It's just, so in that respect, I really like it, both as a toy and as a ship overall. So let's have a quick look at the box. So again here, one of the European boxes, the Bandai there in the bottom right. Romulan Warbird, one of the ultimate attack cruisers, this one apparently. And dual light-up engines. 4 authentic Romulan Warbird sounds from the Star Trek TV show. Cloaking, disruptor, hit shields and engines. Highly detailed replica of the Romulan Warbird. Well, yeah, I mean, fair dues, it's a good likeness of the Dideridex. Now, I bet they don't mention Dideridex in here the same way they didn't mention Vorcha. I wonder if it's because they wouldn't really translate to multiple European languages, or because they're using multiple languages they don't have the room to mention them. I don't know. It's kind of a curious one, that, but if it were me, I would mention the sort of the subtitled version. It's a fairly sort of standard side panels again there. So on the back, Romulan Warbird, again, one of the ultimate attack cruisers, blah blah blah. Press the cloaking or the warp engine button to activate the cloaking warp engine sounds and light up engines. Press the disruptor or hit shields button to activate weapon system sounds. So this is all very similar to the Vorcha sort of back of box information as well. And you can see the Vorcha is down here being advertised as well for it. So we've got some warp engine button, cloaking button, disruptor button, hit shields button going from forwards to back of the Warbird. So again, not dissimilar to what you have on the Vorcha. Main control bridge, navigational deflector, docking port, forward disruptor, which is interesting because they normally fire out of their nose, but it's not inconceivable they'd have weapons down the front, down the bottom there as well. Aft disruptor, light up warp nacelle, and cloaking emitters. I'm not sure if you have cloaking emitters, but okay. And a cloaking device that's sort of sat there where you could easily hit it, apparently. Slightly dubious about that one myself, but anyway. Reference 6154 and 1993. So I've now covered all of these sort of, I think I've seen them referred to as the Wave 1 releases. And the only downside to these really is that they don't have stands. That's the only thing I can really think of to say about them in a negative fashion, because yes, they have, their screws are a little bit sort of obvious, sure, but other than that, the level of detail on them for a toy is really good. I have very, very few complaints with these as a trio of large ships that you can whoosh around as a child and make pew pew noises with. It's good. They're all good. It's good fun. And I remember when I first got these, I was really, really impressed with them because, again, they came in that point in time where I was heavily into my Star Trek Next Generation, as you might have guessed, but I was not in a toy buying phase at that point in time, and these clearly were available in Europe, and even if they weren't in mainline toy stores, they would have been in specialist stores. But in my day, specialist stores didn't really exist. Well, certainly not in my area of the country. So it wasn't until, it would have been, I suppose, I would have visited a few by the time these were coming out, but I was in sort of A-level mode and about to go to university mode, and I wasn't really thinking about toys at that point in time. So I think they would have just missed me in that sense, which is a bit of a shame. I even went to a couple of conventions during university, and the irony was that by that stage I'd kind of moved on because Next Gen had finished, and then I was into Babylon 5. So I was sort of more looking for the Babylon 5 side of things rather than Star Trek things by that stage. Granted, DS9 and Voyager would have been on the horizon at that point, if not already going, actually. But again, I just sort of gone that little bit beyond that at that point, I suppose. It's an interesting one because it just wasn't, unfortunately, just wasn't this period of time when I was buying and playing with toys. But it's lovely to see these now and think that other kids, or people who were younger than me at that point in time would have had these to play with because they're great, great toys. So I'm going to leave it there on that very sort of positive note, and we're going to go in a slightly different direction after this with the Playmates range, because Playmates didn't just do these large ships, they also did a lot of rather clever things on a very much smaller scale, he says mysteriously. So I think that next time we will, after a brief pause for something else, we will have a look at some Playmates inner space examples, and you'll get an idea then of what I mean by some smaller but really sort of cleverly done toys. So stick with the playlist, do like and subscribe as ever, and I'll see you for another one very shortly. Cheers for now.